Okay, so welcome to Talmud Talks today, and we're continuing our discussion of Masechet Brachot and the ninth parak. And it's just nice to see everyone. I know a few people are not going to be able to make it. Gail is unable to be here today, and I think a few other people may not be able to make it, but it's just nice to see everyone today. Shimi, I like some of the stuff you posted on Facebook. So if you're there, thanks. It sounds like it was some interesting things, some nice spiritual growth. So that was really nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I guess might as well just dive in. And Rochelle, would you like to begin with a blessing over the study of Torah, the study of our tradition?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Yes. Thank you, dear God, for giving us all your directives so that we could find holiness, and particularly this directive to engage with the words of Torah. So we're going to dive right in unless there's some outstanding questions from the past. So what's this happening here? Oh, I'll just tell you I'm screen sharing. So last time we were talking about where one can, places where one recites blessings, and we talked about the difference between saying blessing, acknowledging the uniqueness of a place in which a miracle happened for all of Israel, and then also how we give thanks when we come to a place where a miracle happened to us or someone who's very, very close to us. And we talked about the differences between the communal experience and the individual experience. One sort of practical way of looking at this, or application of the difference between the community and the individual, doesn't have much to do with miracles, but has to do something with the way we structure mourning. And it goes sort of like this. In times of public celebration, there's no expression of private mourning. And in times of public mourning, there's no expression of public celebration. So with that idea in mind, we have a sense that in the Jewish tradition, there is a strong emphasis on the communal experience. So when it comes to mourning, you all know that one does not stay at home during Shiva on Shabbat. One goes to synagogue. Obviously, special accommodations are made for mourners. We have a special Kaddish that is put in that we ask them to, we give them the honor of reciting. In certain traditions, on the Erev Shabbat service, they don't have to enter until after the more joyous Kabbalat Shabbat series of Psalms. But the obligation to stay at home and mourn privately is overridden by Shabbat. On another hand, in periods of public mourning, let's say, for example, the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av, one doesn't engage in private celebration, so we don't celebrate weddings and things like that. So that there's a respect for the general community. So again, with this, we have a hierarchy. The places where miracles happen to the Israelite nation, to our ancestors, the Jewish people, that is something we all have to participate in. But if it's a place where a miracle happened to me and you don't know me very well and you happen to pass that, it isn't significant for you and you don't need to recite a blessing. So now we're going to go into a series of places where one recites a blessing. So they list a number of places where they find in a Baraita, Tanu Ravanan, our rabbis, our sages taught. And here is the list. So would someone like to read the list?
I'll start off.
Sure.
The sages taught in a Baraita a list of places where one is required to recite a blessing due to miracles that were performed there. One who sees the crossings of the Red Sea, where Israel crossed, and the crossings of the Jordan, and the crossings of the streams of Arnon, the hailstones of Elgavish on the descent of Beit Horon, the rock that Og, king of Bashan, sought to hurl upon Israel, and the rock upon which Moses sat when Joshua waged war against Amalek, Jacob's wife, and
Lot's wife.
Lot's wife, and the wall of Jericho that was swallowed up in its place. On all of these miracles, one must give thanks and offer praise before God.
So, al kulan zarik sheyitain hoda'a v'shevach lifnei hamakom. That's a nice just ending here, that last line. On all these miracles, or on all these, we don't have miracles in the Hebrew. Tzarik, what is necessary, sheyitain, to give, hoda'ah, thanks, v'shevach, praise, lifnei hamakom. And here the word for God is makom, which means place. So that's an interesting way that here, when we come to a place, a makom, where a miracle happened to our ancestors, to the Israelite nation, the praise goes to God, who is now called Makom. It's a reinforcement of the teaching we just read in the Torah portion. After Jacob's dream, he wakes up and he said, I did not know that God was in this Makom, this place. So we have this word name for God. We've heard this name of God before, right? We've talked about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So sometimes it's translated as the omnipresent, which means the one who is present all over the place. But I think that really takes away the significance. It's not that God is present all over. When we use God, makom, to refer God, we refer to not a transcendent God who is omnipresent, but a very immanent God who is present right now. So let's go back over this list. So we all know some of these, right? So if you were walking around, let's say in the Sinai or in the land of Israel, you would know where to find these things, right?
I don't think so.
Some of them.
Well, sure. You go to the Dead Sea and you get the tour, and they have a pillar of salt there, and someone says, "Hey," the tour guy will say, "That's Lot's wife." But whether it is or it isn't, we have a sense of where it is. We have a sense of where the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, leaving Egypt. We have a traditional sense of where Joshua crossed the Jordan. It's sort of around Jordan, just north of Jericho. He crossed. Does anyone have any idea of what the hailstones of El Gavish are? Or what about this rock that Og, the king of Bashan, sought to hurl upon Israel? We know the story of Israel and defeating Og and Sichon, those great kings, but what about this rock that they wanted to toss? And yes, we know that Moses sat down on a rock early after the crossing of the Red Sea, and when his hands were raised, the Israelites were successful, and his hands went down, the Israelites weren't. What does it mean that the world of Jericho were swallowed up in its place? That's a funny thing. Sheniv Allah bin Koma. So what do we think when we think about the fall of Jericho? Were the walls swallowed up, or did they just collapse?
Collapsed.
Yeah,
The blast from the trumpets.
from the blast of the trumpet. So we know some of these things from our reading of Torah, and it's sort of curious now why these sages taught these things and what they meant.
Mm.
So we're going to have a discussion of that, which means that the rabbis of the Gemara, the Amoraim, were a bit, confused and wanted to take this little teaching and, let's say, make it a little more concrete or fill it out. So this is how they deal with it. So number 15.
What, Rabbi?
Yes.
What
Hi,
about,
Judy.
how are you? What
Blessed.
about the temple, the wall? I mean, isn't that a miracle that that survived?
Yes, but that isn't, that's a good one. And that's a contemporary thing. Sure, Judy. So when you get to see the supporting wall of the Mount to Herod's Temple, the Kotel HaMaravi, the western supporting wall, yes, many people have that sense of blessing. They have a sense that this is a makom that is very close to where God's Shekhinah rests, and all those things are happening. That doesn't seem to.
The rabbis didn't know about it, or
Well, this is, let's go back in history. So this is a Baraita.
so it's
That
like
means
3rd century.
3rd century at the latest. So it could go back, sometime before. It reflects a situation in which Jews knew about many of these places and had access to them. So you could go and visit them. This is, if this teaching is really, really old and it's before the destruction of the temple, obviously, it's a good chance they wouldn't have mentioned it.
Right.
And if this is right shortly after the destruction of the temple, the Kotel and the Temple Mount that was abandoned or destroyed is not a symbol of a miracle, but it's a symbol of something else. Jump ahead a couple thousand years, and it has a whole different meaning.
Mm.
So that's a good question. Are there places over time that are significant, as places for miracles that happen to the Jewish people, and places where we commemorate terrible disasters? And you're nodding right. Yes, I can see, Judy. So that's right. Now there are those things.
I guess the only constant would be the land of Israel. I mean, its significance to us has not changed since the beginning of time.
Or it remained, I don't know if it would say it hasn't changed, but it has remained significant throughout Jewish history.
Yeah, that's what
I'm sure it could, because everything else changes. We change. I mean, I've changed a lot since I was 30. So
me too.
So I can't imagine, that, but there is a constant, it's a constant presence. Though not everything here is in the land of Israel. We crossed the Dead Sea, that's the Red Sea. The battle against Og was in Transjordan. The battle against the Amalekites was in the Sinai desert. What we don't have here, just interesting, what is missing? What biblical miracle places aren't here?
The mountains, the Sinai.
Yeah, Sinai's not here. So that's an interesting thing. Did in the Talmudic period people go to Sinai? I don't know. There may be a couple other places, where miracles happened. lots of miracles happened in the wandering in the desert. We don't have those there.
Yeah.
Other miracles happened in the conquest of the land of Israel. We don't have them there either. So it's sort of interesting. Is this a reflection of let's say a pilgrimage trip? You sort of, we're not talking about any Tana. He's basically the Tana who's the travel agent saying, you go to see this place, and this place, and this is where you have to say blessings. I don't know. But we're allowed to use our imagination to think about, what do these things mean and how they went there. So one interesting place, and this came with, just picked up with a conversation with a friend of mine who's a Catholic teacher, and he was telling me about places that he takes people when he leads them on a trip to the Holy Land, to the land of Israel. And I asked him the question, he gave me a list of places. And I said, well, do you go to any of the post-biblical sites where since so much Christian history happened in this area, in the Holy Land, the development of the early church, some of the major church fathers, you can see the development of how Christian worship evolved. He looked at me as if I were coming from a different world. Actually, I was coming from a different world. And now he says he's more interested in the biblical sites and also sites that are connected, sort of Old Testament sites that are connected to the New Testament, particularly the life and teachings of Jesus through the method of typology. Typology is a Christian type of midrash in which one sees parallels to Jesus as the Christ within the Old Testament story, that they seem analogous. One of the things that he mentioned is that he goes to the place where the traditional site of the crossing of the Jordan, which is also one of the traditional sites of where John the Baptist baptized. Was baptizing and baptized Jesus. And he said, well, there's a connection. And just so say that, so apparently this was a known site. It's quite possible that John the Baptist was baptizing on this site because he thought it was a pretty holy site, because this is where the ark went across the Jordan. And we think the word baptism is a funny word, but basically he was running a public mikveh in the middle of the Jordan. So people could go for spiritual and ritual purification. So let's go over some of these things. Why the crossing of the Red Sea and the crossing of the Jordan? So would someone care to read?
I can read.
Please, Rochelle.
The Gemara elaborates. Granted, the miracles at the crossing of the sea are recorded explicitly in the Torah, as it is stated, and the Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, and the water was a wall for them on their right and on their left. Exodus. So too the miracle at the crossing of the Jordan, as it is stated, the priests who bore the ark of God's covenant stood on dry land within the Jordan, while all Israel crossed on dry land until the entire nation finished crossing the Jordan.
That's really nice, and it reflects a sense that the exodus from the land of Egypt is paralleled with the Exodus, the entrance into the land of the promised land, into Canaan, into Eretz Yisrael. And one of the things is the crossing of the Red Sea is the end of the Exodus, and then we have to go back, so we have to cross the Jordan. The Jordan also has to split. So there's sort of a rolling in and rolling out. It's a beautiful literary parallelism, and here it's picked up. And sure, this is in Torah. Everyone knows this. This is like, I didn't have to tell you should say a blessing there. That's sort of like, you could have figured that one out yourself. Okay, what about the streams of Arnon?
Why the crossing of the streams of Arnon?
Okay, does anyone know where the streams of Arnon might be found, either in the world or in geography or in the Torah? I can tell you where it is in the Torah. It's in Numbers, Midbar. But where it is, it's someplace in Transjordan. Okay, come on, Rochelle, go for it.
However, from where do we derive the miracle that occurred at the crossing of the streams of Arnon? As it is stated, wherefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Yahev in Suphah, and the valleys of Arnon, and the slope of the valleys that incline towards the sea of Ar and lean upon the border of Moab. It is taught, Vahev in Suphah, there were two lepers, one named Et and the second named Hev, who were walking at the rear of the camp of Israel. As Israel passed, the Amorites came and prepared caves for themselves, and they hid in them. They said, when Israel passes here, we will kill them.
Okay, so now they're telling us a really nice story. So Et Vahav Besufa. So that's where we have. So we have this guy Vahav Besufa. So we have two guys. One is Et, and the other is Hev. So here it is. So we have these two guys. They're made up names, but they have these funny Hebrew words which we don't really know what they mean in this little portion, because this is an abstract piece of ancient poetry that's been shoved into the book of Numbers. That's sort of the historical thing. So they talk about, there's one guy Et and one Hev. Obviously, they were lepers, so they were sort of isolated, so they'll be able to figure out things. And the people, the Amorites or the Amorites came, and they were going to seclude themselves in a cave and ambush the Israelites. Now, what did these Amorites not know? Do you want to continue?
And they did not know that the Ark of the Covenant preceded the children of Israel and would flatten mountains before them. When the ark came, the mountains adhered one to another and killed them, and their blood flowed down to the streams of Arnon. When Et and Hev, the lepers, arrived, they saw the blood that was emerging from between the mountains, and they came and told Israel what had happened. Israel recited a song of praise, and it is stated, and at the cascade of the brooks that goes down to the dwelling of Ar, and lies upon the border of Moab. This refers to the cascade of the brooks, where the mountain, which had once been a valley, spread out in the direction of the mountain in Ar in Moab.
Okay, well, this is taking place in Moab. There's the Arnon Valley, and they have this cute little story. You like the story?
Cute story of people being slaughtered.
Well, basically, you have all these guys who are sneaking out. They're all hidden in their tunnels to destroy the Israelites, to attack the Israelites when they go by. So they're tunneled into the mountains in these caves, and they don't know that the ark is sort of like a great big bulldozer making the road smooth for the Israelites. So they get run over by the Israelites, and their evil plans are brought to none. They're destroyed, and the Israelites, realizing they're saved, say, "Yay!" and sing a little song of praise. We know that type of story in different places. Sort of a condensation of the book of Esther.
Miriam's song at the sea.
Miriam, or the Song of the Sea, sung by Moses and Miriam and everyone.
So the emphasis is God saved Israel regardless of the consequences.
Yeah. God saved Israel. The consequences is our enemies were killed. These aren't just just regular old folks who just got run over. These are soldiers who are hiding in the mountain to kill you.
Right.
So there is a little difference.
Well, I mean, you could pray, say, thank you for saving me, as opposed to thank you for killing my enemies. So
Yeah,
it's just the way to present this. And I think they're presenting it is that they were saved. Right.
that's the goal. They are presenting
Right.
it to be safe. But if you read the Song of the Sea, it's talking about what God did and how everyone, how the Egyptians sank
Right.
like
Right.
stones, like lead weights into the bottom of the sea. So, but here it is.
But this actually gives another impact. If this song is sung and potential enemies hear it, they're less likely to attack the Israelites. So to me, it's not. I think it does have a function.
So it has sort of a deterrence function too.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I beat these guys up. Why should you? We see that later on in sort of stories that people come when Joshua enters the land of Israel. Some of the nations, some of the people there, having heard what happened, try to make peace. So we have Rahab said, I know all that God has done to you guys in Transjordan and Moab and Edom. They said, I'm going to help you. Also, we have the 5 cities that surrendered to Joshua and made a covenant because they were afraid. So we have that. So here we have a story. What else we see here is an expansion. We have a very obscure biblical thing that every time we get to the book of Numbers, and we read it, we sort of, scratch our head what it's doing here in that very early section that talks about the defeat of Sihon and Og, the king of the king of Moab and the king of Bashan. And we know that as we look through later biblical literature, the victory over those kings is often parallel to the victories over the Pharaoh. So it's a very important memory for the Israelites, though it isn't as explicitly laid out in the Torah narrative. So this is just sort of filling it out. And we also see here how the rabbis play with Hebrew grammar. Viet behav become personal names rather than other grammatical and other words that have a different syntactical and grammatical function. So they've created a story out of something to explain what's happening. Okay, here's another one we don't know about. Do we have another person who wants to try?
I'll read.
Okay, Judy.
Why the hailstones of Elgavish? Among the sites enumerated in the Baraita, where one is obligated to recite a blessing in recognition of the miracles that occurred there, was the site of the hailstones of Elgavish. The Gemara asks, what are the hailstones of Elgavish? It is taught in the Midrash. They are the stones that remained suspended in the air and did not fall because of Al-Gav, a man, Ish, and they fell down because of Al-Gav, a man, Ish.
So here we have, there's some type of miracle, and it has the dropping of stones. Where were stones dropped on poor, unsuspecting people? Egypt, the big hailstones and things like that.
Oh,
Okay, so you continue,
Sorry.
Judy. So what you see over here is a play. So my avnei al gavish. And they're saying, making a little pun. Al gavish starts with an aleph, but they're translating it al gav ish and putting a I in for the aleph, which may give us a sense that they also didn't make a clear designation in sound between aleph and ayin, between and at this point. So let's go on. The Gemara explains.
It is taught in the Midrash. They are the stones that remain suspended. Oh, I'm sorry. The Gemara explains they remained suspended because of a man, that is Moses, whom the verse refers to as a man, as it is written, and the man Moses was very modest. And it is written, and Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread forth his hands unto the Lord. The thunders and hail ceased, and the rain was not poured upon the earth. Moses' hailstones remained suspended. So it was like he stopped motion.
He stopped them, yes. And the Steinsaltz is saying, if you didn't pick it up already, making it explicit, it's not that they disappeared, they were just left hanging there. So it stopped. It's sort of a weird thing, but where do these hailstones stop? The ones that were halfway down or 3/4 of the way down or a fifth down? And did God just suck them up to heaven? And the rabbis here saying, nope, they just ceased. And continue.
Doesn't Gav mean back? Why is Gav there, but it's not translated?
Where do you see that?
Yardu al Gav ish. So isn't that saying it fell on his back?
No, al-Gav is on account of also.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, that's a good thing because Gav does mean back.
Okay, but not
here.
But not here, you're saying.
Not here. It has another
Okay.
meaning.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Hebrew comes from someplace.
No, it's
That's
really,
great.
al-Gaba, Derek al-Gav. No, that's sort of like another way of doing it. It's an interesting word. It may be related to back because it's sort of connected to it, maybe. So, and let's go on. So Moses says stop, and they're still hanging there. But who's the other guy?
Joshua.
Yes.
And the stones descended because of a man, that is Joshua, who was also called man, as it is written, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is spirit. And it is written that when Joshua and his people waged war against the army of the Amorite kings, God told him not to fear them because God would deliver them into his hands. And indeed, they died by means of these stones. As they fled from before Israel, while they were at the descent of Beit Horon, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. There were more who died with the hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew by sword.
From Joshua. Okay, so this is an interesting construction. So we say the story, they're commenting and say, we have to say the blessing on the Avnei Al-Gavish. Then the same thing is, what is Al-Gavish? And they say it means because of an ish, they did not fall, and because of an ish, they did fall. So who are the ishes? Who are these anashim? So the first thing they say, we have to identify them. So they identify them. They look for Moses when Moses is called an ish, a man, explicitly. And they find this passage in Numbers, Ha'ish, v'ha'ish Moshe anav ma'od. And the man Moses was very modest. So we know that in Numbers, Moses can be that special guy, that ish. And who's the other one in which they might have fallen down? So they look through their little Bibles, and they say, oh, look, here we have a line from Numbers in which Joshua is called an ish, and he is an ish asher ruach bo, and whom they're missing a word here. There is spirit. So now we know that Josh and Moses are anashim, are ish, could be each referred to this ish. And then what do they have to do with stones? And the first one is Moses stops stones from falling, and the second is Joshua causes stones to fall. So whether you agree or not, do you see how this midrash is constructed? It's a beautiful example of how you can construct midrash by tying together biblical words and passages. So even if this may be a little fantastic and doesn't seem, quote, historical, it does seem to be tied in somehow with the biblical tradition. Get that?
Yes.
Let's go to Og. So, Og, the king of Bashan. Would someone care to read about our friend Og? Remember, he was a great big guy in the Bible.
I'll read. With regard to the rock that Og, king of Bashan, sought to throw upon Israel, there is no biblical reference, but rather a tradition was transmitted. The Gemara relates that Og said, "How large is the camp of Israel? It is 3 parasangs. I will go and uproot a mountain 3 parasangs long, and I will hurl it upon them and kill them." He went, uprooted a mountain 3 parasangs long, and brought it on his head.
Okay, so let's stop here. So he's picked up this huge mountain. He's a great big guy. He has this huge mountain, and he's holding it. And I see how Shimi is sort of modeling that with his hands, holding it over his head. So resting it in his hands, holding it on his head, walking over, and he's going to then do, I guess, a press and throw it over and fall on the Israelites. And all the Israelites will be smashed. In some way, it sort of reflects, maybe the spies weren't incorrect, that, we did look like grasshoppers. But there are some really big guys living around here, Anakim. So what does the Holy One do?
The Holy One, blessed be he, brought grasshoppers upon it, and they pierced the peak of the mountain, and it fell on his neck.
Okay.
Og wanted to remove it from his head. His teeth were extended to one side of his head and to the other, and he was unable to remove it. And that is what is written: you break the teeth of the wicked.
From Psalms.
From the Psalms.
So when I read Psalms and it says, Shnei Rishayim Yishbarta, I generally get a sense of an image of God throwing a right hook into the jaw of the wicked. That's always been my image until I read this. Now I have this other image, is that this mountain, he's holding it up and it collapses on top of him and his whole jaws are knocked out.
This must have been some pretty tough grasshoppers too.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the mountain.
Yeah, so it could have been a whole bunch of locusts.
And this is in accordance with the homiletic interpretation of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, as Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, "What is the meaning of that which is written, you break the teeth of the wicked? Do not read it as you break shibarta, but rather as you lengthened shirbafta." The story.
Okay, so here we're talking about, what does it mean? Reish Lakish is saying he's not breaking the teeth, he's sort of dislocating, pulling them out. And they're saying all that does. Okay, now we have just another little bit about Moses.
The story concludes, how tall was Moses? He was 10 cubits tall. He took an axe 10 cubits long, jumped up 10 cubits, and struck Og in the ankle and killed him.
Okay, so Moses, this is gives the size of Og. So Moses is he could have been on the NBA. He's a really tall guy, 30 feet tall. I mean, maybe 25 feet tall, a really tall guy. And he takes an axe, a huge double-handed axe, and then he jumps up 25, 30 feet. And when he hits Og, where does he hit Og?
In the ankle.
Ankle.
The
So
ankle. So, you know, and then Og apparently falls and dies.
What does that have to do with teeth?
That's just it has nothing to do with teeth, but you know, it's God breaks the teeth of the wicked. So I guess what you have an image here is God sort of whacks Og in the jaw, and Moses then, seeing Og weakened, jumps up and hits him.
2 against 1, not a fair fight.
Not a fair fight. No. But as big as Moses is, he's a midget compared to Og. So I think it's just a really interesting image. What does it, what does it mean that Moses was more than life size? Did you ever think about Moses as a giant?
No.
Why do you, we don't have to answer these questions, but why do you think the Baal HaMidrash, the person who created this Midrash, wants to have a supersized Moses? Why is Moses a superhero?
To match all the amazing things that he was able to accomplish.
Yeah. Could you see this as a Marvel movie?
It reminds me of Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, that's another thing. Huge guy. Yeah.
Was this after like Greek mythology?
Well, it wasn't after. I mean, this is
Or
created
during?
in a world that uses these type of images. Mythological images, including Greco-Roman images, how the Jewish people have been interacting with them at least since the beginning of the Second Temple period. And before that, they were interacting with the mythic stories of the Canaanites and Babylonians and the Egyptians. So mythic imagery, mythic motifs, do exist. Obviously, folklore has always existed. Well, I'm going to leave you that. I'll leave us just to contemplate this idea of Moses as a superhero, and I really like the idea of seeing this as a Marvel movie in which Moses has to even fight someone greater than he, and the superhero Moses gets this divine intervention.
Also, the David stories, they're really superhero and
yeah, David is a superhero, and sometimes you see as we go into Midrashim that David is made increasingly strong. Jacob is also even within the biblical context, even though he's described as an Ish Tam, Shev Ba'ohalim, a modest man who lives in tents. His first act, and he comes to Haran. What does he do with he sees everyone gathered at the well, and all the shepherds are there, and they're not doing anything until they get enough shepherds when they can just roll the huge rock off the well. And what does Jacob do?
Pulls it off.
He says, yeah, move aside, guys, and he pushes it off. So we have great strength is sort of part of many of our biblical heroes. We don't really talk about that, and superhero Jacob compared to modest little Jacob sitting in the tent. So even though he was sitting in the tent, he apparently was going to the gym every day and pumping iron.
I mean, even in the past, in our recent past, with the 6-Day War, being a marvel of, unfortunately, we don't have that image anymore. the little guy that defeats the giant.
Yeah, or do we have the image of the powerful Jew? One of the ways that Jews, as they entered into the modern world, particularly once we get into the 19th century, is trying to reconfigure a way that we think about the Jewish body, and moving away from a conception and a perception of and a presentation of Jews as being physically weak. But there's a significant move to show Jews, imagine Jews as being physically strong. And we see this reflected in the development of Jewish sports clubs, JCCs here would be an example, or the various sports clubs that are developed in Europe for Jews, because Jews couldn't go into the general sports clubs, the development of the Maccabi movement, as well as part of Zionism, was to produce a new image of the Jewish body.
The Mossad.
Yeah, I mean, all those things, and then just plays out, and not that, I think it's a good thing to have, but it is in some ways sort of also problematic. So the move from the weak Jew, no strength, poor, underfed, sitting in the yeshiva, working at home, struggling, was replaced by people with an image of a more powerful physical.
Right.
Uri Ben Kanaan in the movie Exodus is perhaps the best visual image of what the new Jew should look like.
Right.
Or for me when you see me in the gym. So, why Lot's wife? Now, we know that. But why is that a miracle for us? That seems like a really downer.
It's a cautionary tale.
Yeah. But it really causes lots of problems for Lot and his surviving daughters. So they both fled the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yes, Judy, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, can you make an equivalency between Lot, who didn't listen, to Adam and Eve, who didn't listen?
You mean between Mrs. Lot, who doesn't listen, and Adam and Eve, who doesn't listen?
Yeah.
And
then,
please do it, because
Moses,
we're in the world of Midrash, so make your connection.
Right.
It's your story, Judy. Go tell it.
That's right. and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
But why is it the woman who doesn't listen?
Yeah.
She has a mind of her own.
That could be.
Because she knows better than her husband.
That could be. Sometimes this also reminds you of the Orpheus myth, when Orpheus is bringing his wife back from Hades, and he's told not to look back, but he hears her slip and he looks back, and then she is caught back in the underworld. So, the idea of looking back is, is seen here. There was a man who looked back, the hero. Here it's a woman who looked back. But why is the deliverance of Lot and his family become a place of thanking God when it is marked where the wife died?
Rabbi?
Yeah.
So
yes,
I would say that the covenant was honored where the whole world wasn't destroyed, only the cities were destroyed. And that's how I would look at it. That not that I'm in agreement, but you could say that God didn't destroy the world again.
Okay. Yes. That's good. I mean, we have a lot of good ideas. That's a good one, Cindy. You know, it's sort of just as just a small destruction, because there are parallels between the destruction in the time of Noah, and the time of this destruction, the time of Abraham.
So AI says that Lot's wife is not considered a blessing, but it serves as a cautionary tale representing the dangers of looking back to the past and not fully committing to God's instructions.
Yeah, well, that's the
Job,
problem.
AI.
No, I mean, that's a really good answer, Michelle. That's why
Yes.
this becomes, curious why this is a place where they say you should recite a blessing. What blessing do you recite? Is it a different blessing than these places where the Israelites, our ancestors, were saved? And so we have nine things, or let's see, seven. We have 8 things, and one out of them doesn't seem so obvious. Okay, so let's go on now.
Rabbi,
Yes.
it doesn't say, it says one should recite a blessing. Do we have any idea? Is it a shechachianu? Do we have any idea what kind of blessing was supposed to be recited?
Well, you're thinking just like the Gemara, because we see right here, and I said the problem with the response to seeing Lot's wife. Since you asked the question, let's see what the Gemara does. So you have to recite. You read.
Gemara
No.
asks, granted that one recites a blessing on all of these, they are miracles. However, Lot's wife is a tragedy. Why recite a blessing on a tragedy? The Gemara answers, one who sees that place recites, blessed is the true judge.
Yes. So yes, they have the same problem that we have. Well, we have their problem. Bishlama. Kulhu. Yes. Granted, all of these, they are nisim. Ela ishtosha Lot. Puranutahu. It's a punishment. It's a tragedy. Da'amar, such you should say, Baruch Dayan Ha'amet. The blessing you say when you hear bad news.
Right.
Okay.
Also, when family member passes away and you cut the kriya.
That's right. That is bad news. But is the Gemara happy?
The Gemara asks, but the Baraita teaches that for all of these, one must give thanks and offer praise.
Yes, remember it said you give hoda'ah v'shevach. So they have to then continue. So what are they going to do here?
The Gemara answers, the language of the Baraita should be amended and teach, over Lot and his wife, one recites 2 blessings. Over his wife, he recites, blessed be the true judge. And on Lot, he recites, blessed be he who remembers those who remember the righteous.
And Lot is blessed who remembers the righteous. So for Mrs. Lot, you recite Dayan Hamet, and for Mr. Lot, you say Zocher et Hazatikim. Okay. But they have to play with the Baraita.
Of course.
Change the Baraita. Well, Baraitas are a little more flexible than a Mishnah. So,
as Rabbi Yochanan said, from the story of Lot, it is possible to learn that even during a time of wrath of the Holy One, blessed be he remembers the righteous, as it is stated, and it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt.
Okay. So, even in time of wrath, the Holy One remembers the righteous. I don't know if that's true or not, but at least it's saying that some people do survive. and why the walls of Jericho did not just fall down, but were swallowed up. So you can either read ahead or tell me, what does it mean? What is swallowed up? We have people who are swallowed up. The earth swallows up Korach and his band. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The world opens up. Now, it's not unusual to experience people being swallowed up. In Florida, they have sinkholes and people get swallowed up occasionally. Israel is on a fault zone, the great African Syrian Rift Valley, which goes right up, and the Jordan River is flowing down, part of the northern part of it. So Israel and Lebanon and Jordan and Syria going all the way up is a possible earthquake zone. So people do get swallowed up. The Temple Mount was designed to withstand earthquakes. Another reason why it's standing. So, why would someone care to read number 11?
I'll read.
Yeah.
Okay, why the walls of Jericho did not just fall down, but were swallowed up. The Baraita also taught that we recite a blessing for the wall of Jericho that was swallowed up in its place. The Gemara asks, were the walls of Jericho swallowed up into the ground? Didn't they fall as it is stated? And it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the shofar that the people shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. The Gemara explains, since the width and height of the walls were equal to one another, therefore they were swallowed. Had they merely fallen, it would have had no effect, as their width was equal to their height.
Okay. So this is an interesting thing. They have these walls, and the Gemara is describing them primarily as what we might call casement walls, that they had a wall and then they had a house built against it. And the wall of the city formed the outside wall of the house. And they got that from the Joshua story, the story in Joshua, because Rahav's house or place of work, depending on how you want to describe what she does, is right against the wall, so she could let the people around the wall. So if the wall is 20 feet high, and then there are houses that are 20 feet deep along the wall, and in times of war, you would fill in those casements, those little houses, so that if they just collapsed, you'd have, instead of a wall, you'd have a mound. So they just sort of lose their form, but they'd still be an obstacle. So that's why they're saying they had to be flattened. And for those of us, just to end, because here's the passage of from Numbers that we read in the beginning when we had Mr. Eight and Have, who are talking about it. Al ken omer b'sefer milchamot Adonai et ve'hev b'sufa v'et ha-nechalim arnon. So here, et is sort of a part, little piece of speech that is introducing sort of an object. Speaks of Vahev and speaks of the wadis of Aaron, and the rabbis already played, as we saw, saying this eight and have become not a grammatical thing, not talking to an accusative, the object of a sentence, but talking to do special names. And it goes on. So, and its tributary wadis stretched along the settled country of hugging the territory of Moab. And from there to Beir, which is the well where Adonai said to Moses, assemble the people that I may give them water. Then Israel sang this song, spring up, O well, sing to it. The well which the chieftains dug, which the nobles of the people started with maces, with their own staffs, from the Midbar to Matana, and from Matanah to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamot, and from Bamot to the valley that is in the country of Moab, at the peak of Pisgah, overlooking the wilderness. And if you listen to this, read here, they begin their song, Aj Yashir Yisrael et Hashirah Hazot. And you remember how the Song of the Sea begins? Aj Yashir Moshe et Hashirah Hazot. So this is how we know this is a song of praise. Oh, let me get out of this screen share and get to see everyone. So as we close up, I thought this, and this is for me, was actually an interesting set of midrashim for a number of reasons. One, that it was a good illustration of how midrashim are constructed. Two, it gives us an insight into the legendary or mythic imagination of our Jewish legends as recorded by the sages. Three, it is actually a good example of how the Gemara works when it deals with in a very simple way, but a nice way, when it deals with a Baraita, explains it, and then sees another problem and has to explain it again. Mm-hmm. So how the Talmudic reasoning keeps going deeper and deeper, asking for more specifics. And it was also fun imagining Moses as a superhero and other things. So we are going to be taking a break until after the secular New Year. But we will be back. And we'll have more fun stuff from the rest of Brachot. Hopefully we'll finish the Masechet by the end of the year. That's my goal. We won't read everything, but I'll give you a good taste of some of the fun stuff that's in this part. I want everyone to enjoy Hanukkah. Enjoy the celebration. It's also going to be Christmas, so that's for some of us hard. I'm not a big Christmas fan, but please make sure that you.
It made one Jew a lot of money.
Made a lot of Jews a lot of money.
Yeah, Irving Berlin.
Yeah, and that's a whole new talk, and maybe that's a talk that you and I can give, Ira. Yep. About how Jews changed Christmas or picked up an aspect of Christmas to make it secular.
Yeah, that'll be on the 11th, actually, of January, for Spice Up, part of my talk.
Okay, yeah. Now, just remember, we didn't start secularizing it, and the big Christmas stories, such as, let's say, Christmas Carol. Dickens was not Jewish, and Tchaikovsky was not Jewish. So the other Christmas stories that people like to celebrate, the Christmas Carol and the Nutcracker, Jews didn't do it, but
Bernard Herrmann was, and he did the music for Christmas Carol at one point.
He took up it. Yes, he did. Yes, but Jews were very good in trying to make Christmas safe for Jews. Yep. So I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. I want to wish everyone all the best. Enjoy the holiday. Remember, whatever you feel, eggnog, I like eggnog, and I like lots of Christmas cookies, and I like latkes, and I don't like getting fat. So try to balance both. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. I know I'll see many of you in the community, but if I don't, have a happy Hanukkah. Have a happy secular New Year. Be safe, and we'll all get together in January. And now we got the ad for the January 11th Spice Up Your Judaism. So be there.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
everybody.
Bye-bye.